Hi there. So today we're going to be discussing the human brain. So as we know, there are three divisions of the brain. We have the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. The forebrain has the telencephalon, the diencephalon. The midbrain has the mesencephalon. The hindbrain has the metencephalon and the myelencephalon. So the telencephalon is comprised of the cerebral cortex, which is really, really important. It's the youngest part of the nervous system. It interprets sensory input, voluntary movement, complex cognitive processes. So the way it does this is actually pretty, pretty solid in the way you would describe it. We have the cerebral cortex, okay? It's tissue, and it has fissures, which means that it's kind of scrunched together. So because if it was bigger, then it would take up more space in the brain and make your brain like, whatever, like grow. So it's also known as gray matter, the cerebral cortex. It's furrowed and convoluted, so we can increase the amount, but like not the space. Large furrows are called fissures. Small furrows are called succi. And then the ridges in between the fissures and the succi are gyri. So we have the prefrontal cortex, which deals with planning and emotion. The primary motor cortex, which deals with voluntary movement. The primary sensory cortex, which deals with info from the body. The visual cortex, which deals with processing complex visual stimulation or stimuli. And then the auditory cortex, which deals with processing auditory stimuli. Now, there are 4 lobes in the cerebral cortex, and they're really important. And damage to these lobes can have huge repercussions for a human and their behavior. So frontal lobes, which are located in the prefrontal cortex, deal with planning and emotion. Parietal lobes, which are located in the sensory cortex, deal with touch, senses, taste. Temporal lobes are in the auditory cortex because they deal with learning, memory, hearing. Occipital lobes, that deals with vision, so that's going to be in the visual cortex. Now, like I said, damage is pretty big. So if the frontal lobe is damaged, as in the case it was with Phineas Gage, there can be some serious repercussions, like you don't know how to act socially, you can't make plans, you're passive. Parietal lobes, which are located in the sensory cortex, deal with you can forget, it can just fuck up touch and pain, basically. And then with temporal lobes, you can have a loss of memory, and you can't recognize people because, like we stated before, temporal lobes deal with learning and memory. So occipital lobes, visual cortex, you just go blind, which is pretty sad. So let's go back to the forebrain. Well, I think I have a little more. Maybe not. Oh, okay. So in the forebrain, just to review really quick, we have the telencephalon and the diencephalon. The telencephalon is the cerebral cortex. The diencephalon is the limbic system, which is important to know. The limbic system circles the cerebral cortex, and it deals with the 4 F's, which are fleeing, fighting, feeding, and fucking. The limbic system is composed of the amygdala, the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, and the thalamus. Amygdala deals with fear, and if it's damaged, you can have fits of rage and strange sexual whatever. Hippocampus deals with memory and stress. The hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is involved in what we said in the limbic system. So all these things are involved in fleeing, feeding, fighting, and fucking. That's what the limbic system is, and that's what the amygdala, hippocampus, hypothalamus, and thalamus all comprise. So then we have the midbrain, which has the mesencephalon, and that takes care of, that has the superior colliculus and the inferior colliculus. The superior colliculus is visual. So it's associated with visual function, while the inferior colliculus is associated with auditory function. Now this is really important. The substantia nigra is located in the mesencephalon, and it contains dopaminergic neurons that communicate with the caudate nucleus and the putamen in the basal ganglia, which is a subcortical structure. And yeah, it's just after the limbic system. So it's just after the diencephalon, which means it's in the mesencephalon, and that's where the substantia nigra is. And it gets dopamine neurons that communicate with the caudate and the putamen, which are part of the substantia nigra, part of the basal ganglia, and that's related to Parkinson's disease. So let's just take a little, like we discussed the limbic system in the diencephalon, we're going to discuss, or in the forebrain, we're going to discuss the basal ganglia subcortical structure, which is in the midbrain. So there is striatum, which is the release of dopamine hits striatum. Caudate is tail-like. Putamen receives dopamine. Lack of dopamine leads to involuntary movement, which is like Parkinson's, which you have limited voluntary movement. The amygdala is like aggression, fear, anxiety, which is also a part of the limbic system. The striatum, caudate, putamen, and then the globus pallidus. So that's that. And then we have the hindbrain, which has the metencephalon and the myelencephalon, and that has the pons, the medulla oblongata, and the cerebellum. So the pons is like breathing, coughing, sneezing, heart rhythms, blood pressure, swallowing, vomiting. Damage to the pons can result in double vision and partial paralysis. We think that a small pons, the nuclei of the pons are smaller in people with autism, so we think that there's a correlate there. Damage to the medulla can cause death and create a loss of pain and make swallowing hard. The cerebellum is fine motor control and cognitive processes that require timing. And then reticular formation is involved in sleep, attention, movement, maintenance of muscle tone, stuff like that. Great, so that's the brain. Let's see. That can go there. Okay. Now we're going to discuss brain imaging techniques. So there are a few things we need to know about brain imaging techniques. We have contrast x-rays, which the substance that absorbs x-rays, so the structure of interest stands out, so we make areas stand out. Cerebral angiography, we inject dye into the carotid artery, and it reveals enlarged or displaced blood vessels. The computerized tomography, or CT, uses a computer to combine many individual x-rays, and it produces a 3D picture of the brain. It's not particularly high resolution though. We're going to continue in the next video.